Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Friday, the 20th of June. You're tuned into our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. South Korea condemns Japan over its plans to release the results of its examination to verify the country's official apology for its wartime system of sexual slavery. The report on the so-called Kono statement is due out later today. The leaders of Korea and Kazakhstan agreed to work closely together on major energy and power projects currently underway between the two countries. Plus, US President Barack Obama says the US is sending up to 300 military advisors to Iraq and may take targeted military action against Islamist insurgents. But our top story this morning, the Japanese government is set to announce the results of its review into a landmark apology for the country's wartime system of sex slavery. The Abe administration's decision to take another look at the so-called Kono statement has sent yet another chill down frosty Korea-Japan relations. Yulian starts us off.
Japan's Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Katsunobu Gato is set to announce the result of a review on the Kono statement Friday at a House of Representatives Budget Committee meeting. The statement was issued back in 1993 by then Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono and acknowledged for the very first time the Japanese Imperial Army had forced women, euphemistically called comfort women, into sexual slavery during World War II. In February, Japan said it would re-examine the statement, drawing strong criticism from Korea, who slammed the neighboring country for its continued efforts to deny its historical wrongdoings. Speculation on the result of the review are running high, with concerns that Tokyo may try to revise or backtrack on the statement, given that Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had said in the past that he did not believe women were coerced to work in military brothels. Japanese media reported earlier this week that the review will say the exact wording of the Kono statement was influenced by Korean bargaining. Seoul said it stands ready to counter the results of the examination and emphasized that the statement was made on Japan's own accord. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
Now, on a related note, the comfort women issue has been brought up yet again as a human rights case at the United Nations. This comes as Japan, as we saw there, is set to finish its investigation into the Kono statement. And just to reiterate, this is the Japanese government's acknowledgement and apology for its army's sexual enslavement of women and girls before and during World War II. Now, speaking at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva on Thursday, the South Korean ambassador to the UN in Geneva, Choi Seok-young, called Japan's new probe into the 1993 apology deplorable and regrettable. The South Korean Navy has begun a naval firing drill about 1 hour ago, actually, in waters off the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island in the East Sea. The Japanese government requested on Thursday that Korea call off the scheduled 3-hour drill, saying it takes place in Japanese waters. South Korea's foreign ministry says the drills actually take place well within Korea's maritime borders. Seemingly annoyed with Japan's repeated claims to Dokdo, the ministry also said Tokyo's opposition to the exercise doesn't make any sense at all. Now, the leaders of Korea and Kazakhstan have agreed to take their nations' economic ties to the next level by expanding joint projects between the Central Asian nations' energy sector. Wrapping up a summit Thursday, the Kazakh president threw his full support behind President Park Geun-hye's North Korea policies. Our Choi San-fa this report from Astana.
President Park Geun-hye and her Kazakh counterpart Nursultan Nazarbayev first checked up on 3 previously signed joint projects that are worth $10 billion while agreeing to speed up the construction of a coal thermal plant and petrochemical complex along with mining projects near the Caspian Sea. Seoul finalized a deal for Astana to purchase electricity worth $18 billion from the thermal plant for 20 years.
우리 두 정상은 상호 보완적인 경제 구조의 시너지를 실현시키기 위해 자원과 기술을 결합한 새로운 협력 방식을 창의적으로 발굴해 나가기로 하였습니다.
Beyond their energy ventures, the two leaders agreed to sign a rail technology sharing deal that could offer Korean firms the chance to participate in Kazakh railway and transportation infrastructure construction in the future. This, in line with President Bak's initiative to link energy and logistics infrastructure across Eurasia to transform the global economic system and assure security on the Korean peninsula. They also discussed working together in areas of medicine, forestry, and visa waivers.
The former resources-centered diplomacy between the two sides has now been expanded to energy and all other industries.
Kazakhstan, which voluntarily handed over some 1,000 former Soviet nuclear warheads in the 1990s, reiterated its position of not recognizing North Korea as a nuclear weapon state. It also endorsed President Bak's trust-building policies with the North. Wrapping up her state visit to Kazakhstan, President Bak will depart for the final leg of her Central Asia tour to Turkmenistan Friday, the first ever visit to the country by a Korean president. Choi Yusan, ARIRANG News, Astana.
And following Thursday's summit there, President Park attended an opening ceremony for an exhibit of artworks by ethnic Korean artists in the Kazakh capital, before looking around art pieces by 4 ethnic Koreans, as well as 12 Korean artists. Under the title People, the president talked about the painful history of Korean immigrants in Russia's Far East who were deported there in the 1930s. She then expressed her gratitude and also encouragement to their descendants for overcoming that pain and having settled down extremely successfully in Kazakhstan and throughout Central Asia. The artworks, which feature Korea's migration history and Koreans' will to open a bright future, will run at the Palace of Independence in Astana until July 16th. South Korea's military has warned that North Korea's mid-range missiles could possibly hit Seoul without being intercepted. This is according to South Korea's Defense Ministry, who analysed the 2 mid-range Nodong missiles that were test-fired by the North back in March. Officials say Pyongyang fired the missiles to test, really, if they could avoid South Korean or American missile interception systems. This is because even though the missiles have a range of about 1,300 kilometres, the missiles were launched at a higher angle than usual and only travelled about half the length before dropping into the East Sea. By launching them at this much higher angle, officials say North Korea could potentially get past South Korean and US missile interception systems.
Said that a team of South Korean...
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. Major investment banks have maintained their growth forecast for the Korean economy at an average of 3.8% this year, this despite the ferry disaster back in April. 8 leading institutions, including Goldman Sachs, said they expect the Korean economy to continue on the path of recovery, driven by the country's traditionally strong exports. However, they did point to lingering risks to the economy's fundamentals, including growing household debt and the falling profitability of exports due to the strength of the Korean won. The Korean wave may be bringing a record number of tourists to Korea, but the government is hoping the nation can become a hub for the meetings, incentives, convention and exhibition, or as it's otherwise known, MICE industry as well. Our Shin Se-min reports on a special expo taking place in Seoul dedicated to this goal.
For the second year running in 2013, Seoul was named the best international business meetings destination by the U.S. edition of Business Traveler magazine. However, that success has not spilled over to the rest of the nation. According to a recent report by the Hyundai Research Institute, Korea's overall competitiveness in the meetings, incentives, conventions, and exhibition, or MICE industry is quite low, ranking 18th out of 21 nations surveyed. It found that Korea as a whole was lacking in terms of transportation, accommodations, and marketing. To pump some new life into the sector, Korea opened the MICE Expo 2014 on Thursday with more than 350 domestic and foreign businesses participating. The event, hosted by the Korea Tourism Organization and the Culture Ministry, provides the environment for business deals.
Although we haven't seen a huge jump in sales yet, we are receiving more requests to hold events at our hotel. It's a big reason we continue to promote ourselves here at the expo and meet other potential business partners.
The MICE Expo, which runs through Friday in Ilsan, also aims to attract more tourists to Korea through other means, like promoting the popular Buddhist temple stay program. Medical tourism is also a big draw. In fact, a big portion of Korea's MICE industry belongs to medical tourism, which has been growing at an average rate of more than 37% annually in recent years.
And I'm interested to finding new partners, the DMC companies, the hotels, the venues, and medicine companies also. Of course, sometimes we have requests from Russian people to make a medicine inspection. That's why I'm trying to find something new.
The government has plans to host more events and conventions on Korean soil in the years to come. And by doing so, it hopes to add jobs and provide a much-needed boost to the domestic economy. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Now, Koreans love to eat fried chicken and drink ice-cold beer during big sporting events. Now, this combination is actually so popular here in Korea that it has its own name, chimek. World Cup time is usually boom time, but with most of the games unfortunately starting so early in the morning here in Korea, Korean football fans are getting their snack food from elsewhere. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Chimek, a word that combines chicken and the Korean word for beer, mekju, is the go-to food and drink during sporting events here in the nation.
Statistics back it up. During the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, sales of chicken and beer in Korea almost doubled compared to the same period in the previous year. A similar effect was seen during the 2006 World Cup. But the effect has been muted during this year's global event, mainly due to the time difference between Brazil and Korea. In many ways, it's a repeat of what was seen during the 2010 World Cup, when sales were up for games watched in the evening here in Korea. As for Korea's early morning match against Nigeria, it was a much different story. Although sales were up, they paled in comparison to figures from the night games. While Team Korea plays its games in Brazil, it will be the early morning here in Korea. A fact that doesn't please chicken franchises.
The World Cup games are starting in the wee hours this year. Chimek was not part of the hype, so sales have been lower than expected.
Although it's clear that fried chicken and beer businesses won't see sales go through the roof, as in past World Cup events, there's a certain type of business that's benefiting from the Brazil-Korea time difference. It's the 24-hour convenience store.
Sales have gone up since the World Cup started, especially snacks and ready-to-eat meals. CU also has World Cup promotions to attract customers.
According to CU, a major convenience store franchise, sales of ready-to-eat meals and snacks were up 15%, bottled water up over 50%, and coffee up nearly 10% during the first week of the Brazil World Cup, compared to a week earlier. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we continue on with our 2014 Brazil World Cup coverage with some matches that took place earlier today, this including Ivory Coast and Colombia, who both have a chance to advance to the next round. And of course, taking a look at the highlights here, both sides do go scoreless in the first half of the match, but all the action in the second half as Colombia's James Rodriguez opens up the scoring in the 64th minute, followed by Juan Quintero's goal in the 70th minute for a 2-0 lead. Ivory Coast would get on the score sheet in the 74th minute thanks to Gervinho, but Colombia gets the win 2-1 and advances to the next round. Meanwhile, England and Uruguay scoring off both sides neck and neck until the 38th minute when Luis Suarez heads in the first goal of the match, giving Uruguay the 1-0 lead. But in the second half, Wayne Rooney, who had a hard time scoring in the World Cup, finally finds one back of the net as he gets the equalizer in the 75th minute. Looks like it was going to be a draw until Luis Suarez strikes once again, this time in the 85th minute, giving Uruguay the 2-1 lead and the win. And lastly, Japan and Greece facing off as both teams try to avoid the elimination with a loss. But Greece down a man in this match after a second yellow. But despite the disadvantage, their defense steps it up as both teams draw 0-0. And now with the Korea-Algeria match taking place 4 p.m. Sunday local time and 4 a.m. Monday morning Korea time, the Taeguk Warriors must win in order to increase their chances of advancing to the next round. So let's now take a look at Algeria's strengths and weaknesses going into this match. Of course, taking a look at here, the strengths. Algeria is not known for their defense, but they tend to defend early in the match and tend to do a good job with it. But when it comes to their offense, they use the long ball to score, which means the Korean defense needs to focus, especially the center backs. Another crucial thing to watch out for is their ability to score on the headers, and since Korea is very weak against the set piece, something they really need to focus on. Meanwhile, taking a look at their weakness here, they're just not the best defenders, especially on the wing, which means Hoon Heung-min and Lee Chung-young will be crucial to Korea's success. But just like I said before, they need to be very aggressive on the offense all throughout the 90 minutes, but at the same time, make sure they don't get countered. And now finishing things off with Portugal losing to Germany 4-0 in their first match. Their next match against USA is a crucial one, but world-class footballer Cristiano Ronaldo might not be able to play for the rest of the World Cup. With the latest MRI showing serious pressure on the patellar tendon in the Portuguese winger's left knee, his team doctor warned Ronaldo that further playing with the injury could lead to tearing the tendon beyond repair. Dr. Jose Carlos Noronha, who performed numerous surgeries on some of the top footballers in the world, added that he needs 2 months off from the game now if he hopes to fully repair the injured knee. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we are following on this Friday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at the News Centre. Good morning, Eunice.
Hello, Mark.
Now, the United States is stepping up into Iraq once again, albeit this time a little differently, to say the least. US President Barack Obama is sending a substantial group of military advisors to Iraq, but they won't be on the front lines.
That's right. He's ordered some 300 military advisors to back up Iraqi security personnel in their fight against ISIL militants. This also comes amid calls for Iraq's prime minister to be replaced. Here's Connie Lee with the story.
Washington is extending a much-needed helping hand to Iraq. The U.S. has decided to send about 300 military advisors to help Iraqi troops fight off insurgents. This nearly 3 years after President Barack Obama pulled the last U.S. troops out of the country. President Obama made it clear, though, that the help this time around will not be in combat.
American forces will not be returning to combat in Iraq, but we will help Iraqis as they take the fight to terrorists who threaten the Iraqi people, the region.
In a briefing at the White House on Thursday, Obama also stressed the need for Iraq's government to be more inclusive.
It is clear, though, that only leaders that can govern with an inclusive agenda are going to be able to truly bring the Iraqi people together and help them through this crisis. Meanwhile, the United States will not pursue military options that support one sect inside of Iraq at the expense of another.
He added that the U.S. is not in position to choose Iraq's leaders. But citing support from the U.S., some political leaders in Iraq are calling for the prime minister to be replaced. Nouri al-Maliki has come under fire for his sectarian policies, favoring Shiite interests, and is widely blamed for the spiraling Sunni insurgency. The insurgents, called the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, or the ISIL, are now in control of many of Iraq's northern cities. The ISIL, now eyeing Baghdad, poses the greatest threat to Iraq's security since the U.S.-led invasion back in 2003. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko is gathering support for his peace settlement plan this day after declaring a unilateral ceasefire in the embattled east yesterday. According to Russia's Itar-TASS news agency, Poroshenko said Kiev's forces will put down their arms only briefly and called on illegal armed units to do the same for order to be established. He renewed an offer of amnesty as well as an escape corridor for militants to disarm and leave Ukraine. He also called for tighter border control between Ukraine and Russia. And 1 week from today, the Ukrainian leader will sign the controversial EU association agreement, the very deal that ousted President Viktor Yanukovych refused to sign at the last moment. And a remarkable rescue in Germany. A seriously injured explorer was saved after nearly 12 days in the state's deepest cave. Johann Westhauser was pulled out of a 1-kilometer deep and 6.5-kilometer long hole in a rescue mission that brought together more than 700 people from 5 different countries. The operations chief called it one of the most difficult rescue operations in the history of the Mountain Rescue Service. The 52-year-old suffered injuries to his head and chest and was airlifted out in the company of doctors. In reaction, the local council will consider closing the Resending cave complex for good. And finally, in Spain, a new king has ascended to the throne, marking the country's first royal transition since democracy was restored in the 1970s. Prince Felipe VI became king at the stroke of midnight Thursday local time upon his father Juan Carlos's formal abdication after a 39-year reign. The swearing-in ceremony was kept low-key in respect to Spain's ongoing economic challenges. No foreign leaders or royal families were invited. In his first address to the people, the 46-year-old king promised to uphold the Constitution and said he had great hopes for the future of Spain.
Good morning, I'm Lee Ji-hyun with your weather update. Today's weather looks to be similar to previous days. The sun will be hiding behind the clouds most of the time, and the capital areas will have hotter afternoon, while the southern regions should see somewhat cooler readings today. And the monsoon front will move northward again today, dropping rain on Jeju from the late at night. And Jeju and other southern coastal regions should receive monsoon rain till Sunday morning. And here in Seoul, we'll also see showers over the weekend. Another band of rain is in store tomorrow morning, and most parts of the central region will receive sporadic showers tomorrow afternoon due to a weak trough of low pressure. So Sunday should be the only sunny day, and temperatures should hover mid to upper 20s in the capital. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul will rise to 29, while Daegu and Gwangju will peak to 27 and 30, and Busan should climb to 24 later in the afternoon. Now, for other regions, down on Jeju will have a high time temperatures 25, Daejeon and Dokdo will reach 29 and 19, while Mount Gyeongang tops out at 14. Well, that's all for me now, but I will be back with more updates afternoon.
Well, thank you ever so much, as always, Jiyeon, for the weather there. And that's all we have for now, but we will be back with another newscast at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.